Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome. Thank you for taking the time to watch this presentation today. We're really thrilled to have a few moments of your precious time to talk about headless architectures. I'm Jonathan Day. I'm the founder and managing director of Aligent Consulting, and I'm joined by my colleague, Jared.
I'm Jared Swift. I'm the General Manager of Technology here at Aligent.
Great. So our topic today is about headless commerce, as we said. But before we dive into that, rather than boring you with a whole lot of conversation about how awesome Aligent is and all the things that we do, a little bit of context so you know where we're coming from. Aligent is a specialist e-commerce agency. We're very much focused on the success of our clients through understanding what customer experience looks like for them, and how to really maximize that with smart investments and clever use of technology that's fit for purpose, all of which is guided by understanding business value and where that can be found. We're really passionate about our craft, and craft is a concept that's been around for many hundreds of years, as I'm sure you know. And one of the key principles of craft is to give back and to improve the overall knowledge of practitioners within your craft, whatever it might be. For us, our craft is e-commerce. Our craft is the front end and back end and all of the strategy and user experience design, all those disciplines within e-commerce. And today's a big part of giving back and helping to inform and educate everybody with regard to what's a relatively new but very exciting and an approach that's becoming more and more important and validated. So let's dive into that, and we can hopefully provide you with some useful information. So the agenda today is introductions. Well, hopefully we've covered that off. And then to talk about, well, why would you be interested in headless? What are the reasons for it from a business point of view, from a strategic point of view, and ultimately how it's going to make you successful within your organizations. We've got some demos to show you a few different forms and live sites that are great examples of headless architectures. The counterpoint, why would you not do headless? It's not for everybody. Let's make sure we understand some of the reasons and scenarios where it's not a good fit. Finally, this technology industry, we love some jargon. We're good at throwing different terms around that have different meanings. So we'll help to break down the differences and what the key takeaways are for you with regards to those terms. And then finally, some practical information. Jared's going to take us through the building blocks of what headless means in the real world. And then we'll wrap up. So expect this will take us about 35-40 minutes. And what we're going to do right now is just pause and cut over to some slides. See you in a minute. Okay, back again. So we'll take you through initially a vision for what the future might look like when it comes to headless e-commerce, and most importantly, what are the business drivers behind modern e-commerce environments. So if we get started with understanding, really the key aspect is all about customer experience. It's understanding what it is that your customers need, how and when they want to engage, and in ways that makes them feel like you understand them. It's also an environment that enables you to demonstrate your maturity, and we're seeing so much better understanding of how to pull the levers of the different tools that are in your kit bag as a digital marketer, and be able to bring those quickly and seamlessly to bear for your consumers. It's also really important for your brand to be able to stand out. It's a crowded marketplace. There's a lot of intimidating competitors out there. There's Amazon, there's ASOS, there's JD Sports, so whatever your particular industry is that's threatened by particularly some of these overseas international players and people who really coming to commoditize and sell on convenience and price. How do you make your brand stand out and ensure that consumers choose you? They actively are looking for your brand rather than the generic marketplace experience. All of those above the line imperatives need to be balanced against ongoing efficiencies, the ability to reuse your functionality in different modes and in different scenarios, and above all, be flexible. Let's not revisit too much of 2020, but it certainly showed us the importance of flexibility during those times. And it is hard to predict exactly what the future is going to hold in a post-COVID environment. So flexibility both in practical and logistical terms, but also flexibility around your strategic direction as an organization. Perhaps there are acquisition opportunities or divestments or other repositioning of your organization, and your e-commerce architecture needs to support that flexibility while still being efficient and reusable. It also needs to allow you to integrate into new systems, IT environments and rich systems in corporate environments are constantly changing. There's turnover in ERPs and warehouse management systems, CRM, all of these imperatives need to be able to be plugged into your e-commerce environment. And so all of that has to be done clearly. Security should be go without being said, but it absolutely needs to, and particularly privacy as well. There's a lot of focus now and expectation from consumers that their privacy is going to be upheld. So you cannot compromise on the security of your overall solution. And also one really key thing that is easy to overlook is the ability to internationalize. Perhaps opportunities will become apparent for your business in an international market, and that is not necessarily something that can be retrofitted if you haven't chosen the right architecture and solution to get you to that point. There's a lot going on there. There's a lot of things that as a marketer and as a merchant you need to be taking care of, but let's start at the top and focus on experience. Why is it important? Well, it's important because consumers demand it, they expect it. So over 65% of consumers are just their default expectation is that, well, of course, a website or a digital experience is going to be personalized. You're going to know who I am, much more so than knowing, hi, Jared, or the sort of obvious demographics about you, but truly being able to target and present information that's relevant to them in the moment. If you get that right, the results really speak for themselves. Here we've got some data from Forrester, which was commissioned to look across the e-commerce industry, and the results are pretty outstanding. So whether you're looking at some soft factors, the intangibles like brand awareness, or whether you're looking at cold hard, financial outcomes in terms of average order value, ROAS, and revenue growth rates. I found a really interesting one was also the employee satisfaction. I think we all know that in an industry where talent is hard to find and hard to retain, having systems that are actually easy to use and less frustrating is really important. And you can see the outcome there in terms of employee satisfaction when you get customer experience right. That means that you're not going to have cranky customers on the phone. You're not going to have people who are feeling let down and you need to defend your organization because the experience wasn't up to scratch. So that's a real double win and translates, of course, into the customer retention alongside of that, which is also a mirror of customer satisfaction. So really across the board of all of your metrics, whether it be a balanced scorecard that your organization is using or the KPIs that you report up through your organizational hierarchy, there are wins to be found from an experience focus with your digital strategy. So, how do we get there? Well, real customer experience, we see that there are three elements that are key for that. The first is convenience. So allowing the consumer to be able to quickly, intuitively, and comprehensively get all of the information and functionality that they need. So by comprehensive, I mean that needs to provide all of the data that they need, provide all of the pointers and the trust marks and the aspects of building up their confidence to be able to move forward and take advantage of the highly usable and incredibly fast experience that you've presented for them. It also needs to be accessible, so able to be reached from any device, and accessible in the sense of people who might have a disability. A very large proportion of the population, in the region of 10% of the population, identifies as having a disability of some sort. That's a sizable proportion, and it is not only the right thing to do, but it has very direct financial outcomes in making sure that your websites and your digital experiences are accessible to everybody who wishes to use them. Moving on, the context, we talked about being able to target content and make sure that it is the right content for that user, but also that it's engaging. It needs to be more than a flat set of tech specs or a category which is just products on a shelf. Provide them with a way to navigate and engage with your products and make them really shine, both in an interesting way and an informative way. And then the final pillar is control. So allowing that consumer to be able to nominate when, where, and it really should be seamless for them what device they're using, but also they get to control that data. We're seeing Google and Apple really turn up the dial in terms of privacy, switching off third-party cookies, and that's a reflection of customer expectation. Yes, we're all frustrated and scared about what a cookieless future might mean in terms of return on ad spend and retargeting and all those things, but we have to take a step back and say, this is what is best for our consumer, and the people who accept that reality and deal with it best are the ones who are going to make the most of the situation. So customer experience, all of those things together are what we're looking to achieve. So how do we step up to that? What are the approaches of being able to execute on customer experience? Well, headless architecture is one way to get there, and I'm going to take some time to break that down for you today. Thank you. All right, so headless architecture, there's a whole variety of different definitions of what it might mean. What we're going to focus on today, or start with at least, is something that Gartner, the independent industry body, has provided. This was written halfway through last year, and it's really an evolution of what the industry has been saying since 2016, 17, and learning from that journey. So a lot of words in there. I'll let you take some time to read through it, but really the key thing is that you need to be able to pick and choose, to orchestrate, to select what are the right elements that are right-sized to holistically provide an experience. So if we look at a graphic, which helps us to understand what that might mean, on the left-hand side, we've had the traditional, what's known as a monolith, an all-in-one e-commerce platform that is the source and the end of everything that the consumer experiences and what you can do as a digital marketer. On the far right is the other extreme, and that's a very fragmented, disjointed, incoherent experience where systems that don't necessarily know about each other aren't able to come together in a way that makes sense from an experience point of view, is what we also want to avoid. We see some real examples of that in the industry already, where there are some point solutions that have been developed to sit alongside systems that nominally claim to be capable in this modern world, but really aren't. So to call it out, we see that specifically with some of the very pure play closed SaaS solutions, such as a Shopify, where the functionality is inherently limited, and so people are forced to add plugins and add microservices alongside of that, but they're not able to access the underlying experience and customer data. And so you get these disjointed apps that plug in, the loyalty app doesn't know anything about the... Thank you, Siri. The loyalty app doesn't know anything about the fulfillment app or the faceting or the other apps that you've plugged in to, plug holes that are missing in that service. And so there's this fragmented experience. In the middle is what we, Gartner, is saying that you should be looking to achieve, which is right-sized packages of capabilities that are suitable to plug and play. They plug nicely together, but they allow you to ensure that all of these are logical and well coordinated. Okay. if you get it right, the outcomes are very powerful. So again, Gartner, and this is a separate report to the one that gave us the information before. If you get this composable commerce approach, you'll be able to be faster to market, to faster to deliver on and take opportunities than your competitors will be, and by a factor of 80%. That's going to be very compelling and something that your stakeholders in the organisation are going to want to know how you're executing a strategy that allows you to move quickly. Likewise, what we see is that people are already well down this path. So this survey was taken of admittedly a very small group of people who are involved in e-commerce, and but within that you can see a large proportion of them are already either considering, planning, or already using an API-based or headless architecture. So whilst it is still seen as a new approach in some sectors, some parts of this industry, in fact there is good momentum behind it. And here at Aligent we've been working with headless componentry since 2017, so built up a really good level of familiarity with it, and it's there's no doubt in our mind that this is the pathway forward. So what does it mean in a BigCommerce world? Obviously, we're here at a summit that's sponsored by BigCommerce. We would be remiss if we didn't call it out. So BigCommerce is absolutely set up to fit into this world. So this is some of their core marketing material, which talks about the different ways that you can take advantage of a headless approach. So we'll move on and see what that might mean in terms of the different elements of functionality. So BigCommerce gives us these packaged business capabilities. So the ability to manage orders, to handle a cart and checkout, to do tax calculations, etc., and they can be accessed either through traditional templates on BigCommerce, or more relevant for today is the headless approach. You can see examples of content management systems such as Bloomreach, Adobe Experience Manager, Sitecore, WordPress even, and Drupal, or a custom approach where you have a JavaScript head, and we'll have a look at some of those where the really exciting progressive web apps take us. So why would we do this from a consumer point of view? What are the benefits to a consumer? Well, interestingly, a PWA, or a progressive web app, allows us to execute, deliver, implement an experience on the web that is very similar in nature to what your consumers have become used to in native applications. So where previously they'd go to the Apple App Store or the Google Play Store and install one of those applications on their phone, and that is then installed, and it is able to work very seamlessly on the device and have a lot of capabilities that feel very fast and responsive and well integrated into that device. A PWA website allows the consumer to have that same sort of experience. It also delivers a step change in performance. The perception of performance when it comes to a PWA as opposed to a regular template-based website is really night and day. It's an order of magnitude faster in how it is perceived by the consumer. And we know that that translates into conversion rate and better time on site and all the metrics that we're looking for. It also means that we get to leverage some of the on-device capabilities. An example of that is push notifications. So not only can you interact with the consumer whilst they're actively using the website, but you can call them back to it later, and you'll have a notification that will show up in their tray, just like any other installed application can send to the device, and reactivate that session, that interest, whether it be on the basis of maybe it's their birthday, maybe you're aware that there's something in their wish list that is now back in stock. Maybe there's a item that they left in their cart and there was an abandoned item, and you want to reactivate that, and you can pull it right into the experience on the phone and have them jump back into that digital experience very directly, rather than through a different medium such as SMS or email. The other big advantage is that the content that you produce to publish through the web is consistent. So typically, if you're using an Android app or an iOS app, it's very hard to have exactly the same content. It relies on a lot of manual duplication, and more importantly, it's very hard to personalize and maintain a consistent view of the consumer across all of those different interfaces. So by having a single interface, you know that it is the same consumer all of the way, and they are seeing exactly that same content you've prepared for them. That also translates into SEO benefits. Because any content that you put into an iOS app, an Android app, is completely and utterly invisible to Googlebot. It cannot and will never be able to index any of that content and help you rank for it. So and the speed benefit of the PWA is another big thing that Google's really looking to rank you higher on when you deliver a faster experience. One other nice little benefit is because it's installed on the device, you can use offline storage and caching and some other smarts where if you have maybe someone's on the train and they're going through a tunnel, you're able to not have a broken experience for that consumer. Sounds pretty good, right?
Sounds great.
Cool. All right. What we might do now is have a look at some examples. So I'm just going to jump across and show you on my phone. Excuse me for a moment. I'll share my screen. Okay. Share my screen. Start now. Okay. There we go. Excuse the family photos, but this is my phone, and I wanted to show you a little bit about what the experience is like for a consumer to be navigating one of these PWAs. So let's imagine that we're going to search for Mitsubishi Motors, and we'll just do a Google search, and you'll notice, of course, that we find some results on our Google search, and we can click through, and it's really exactly the same as a regular website. What's interesting about this website is that it is built using a very rich CMS that allows us to produce a lot of content that is laid out in very dynamic ways, but also very much targeted and personalized at the individual. So once the user starts to go through and in the way, interact with maybe building up the type of vehicle that they want and complete, partially through this experience, we can start to target that through the rest of their experience on the site or some of the other functionality. So this is a great example of a headless CMS website, and encourage you to check it out. I must put in a little advertisement that this was Aligent's work, and we're pretty proud of it. The next one that I want to show you is, let's see what we're going to do next, Jared. Let's do Burrow.
Yeah.
Burrow Furniture. Come on, Google.
Live demo.
Live demo. I love it. Oh, try it again. Burrow Furniture. Okay. Let's not do the voice thing, shall we? Google's not behaving for me right now, but again, you would be able to do a Google search for this, and you can see it's just a regular website. We get our regular takeovers, which love them or hate them, they are a necessity. You start to see immediately that we've got some really engaging and beautiful content here sliding through with the video content, with lots of product information, and as we click into an individual product, you'll see a huge amount of really beautiful, rich and engaging information about the dimensions of the site, the different ways that you can modularize the furniture, some lovely imagery, those little dynamic videos again, lots of iconographic material here. And then obviously cross-selling and a lot of other information that's provided about Burrow as an organisation. So let's go and have a look. I think probably one of my favourite sites, pages on this is the Pet Friendly. And so we can see here, everyone loves a good doggo, reasons why that these particular products are particularly suitable for additions to your family of the pet variety. This is a PWA, which we'll talk to you about in a moment, which means that it can be installed on your device. So let's go and have a look at what that means. So you'll notice here in my app tray, right next to my banking app and next to my calendar and COVID safe, thank you, Federal Australian Government, there is an app for Burrow, and you'll notice that it's exactly the same experience that we were looking at before, and that is because it is literally the same user interface and code that is rendering all of this. You can see the speed that's involved in presenting this information. It's updating very fast, and probably more equally interesting is that the navigational elements stay persistent. So as you're clicking on the sections of the site, I can still access my shopping cart, I can access the menu, I can access other things similar to what you would with a native application. Okay, let's go to another example. I think this time I'm feeling thirsty. What about you, Jared?
Yeah, let's have a look at Liquorland.
Okay, Liquorland, obviously a provider of alcoholic beverages here in Australia. The thing that you'll notice with the Liquorland site is that it is ridiculously fast. So as we're clicking around, the speed to download the images, download the product information is extraordinarily fast. And again, we've still got that persistent experience with the menu and the search bar. What you'll also start to see in various sections of the site is that information is becoming enriched with a lot of additional content for particular types of products. So if we hop into some of the wines, you'll see that they've been treated in different ways and providing a lot of extra information above and beyond your basic product details. So here's your taste like, here's the hard cheeses, informing the consumer to make a really good choice that's relevant for them, as well as all the things that we'd expect around reviews, both customer reviews and third-party reviews. So great example of a very, very fast and engaging website.
So there's some more as well.
Yep, there's a whole lot of resources there of different examples. Important to point out that these represent a whole variety of different technology solutions, both the e-commerce backends, the CMS systems that are in use, and the hosting, the geography. These are really quite agnostic as to how they've been built, but really the consistent thing is about the experience for the customer. Okay, so we've shown you what a PWA is. It allows you to install it on a device. And this is something, again, that BigCommerce has quite a lot of capability with. Let's keep moving because I'm conscious of time, Jared. So let's look at quantifying some of the benefits. So Loncom were an early adopter of PWA. It was around 4 years ago, I believe, that this case study was published. Some really impressive stats in terms of the notification engagement, much higher than what you would expect for email sends or other forms of contact, 17% in conversion and a significant increase in engagement. George, a clothing company in the UK, again, 30% increase in conversion and 4 times faster than previous sites. Moving on, we've got Pet Love, again, very significant increase in conversion rates and time on site, and similarly for Debenhams, so 40% increase in mobile revenue and 20% increase in conversion overall, which are stats I think we would all like to have. Check out pwastats.com to read more about those. So we talked about the benefits for the consumer and some of those outcomes for the business. Let's look at why that's also useful for you as a merchant and some of those flexibility things. So technically what's happening here is the user interface has now moved into the browser. So that has some implications. Let's just run through all of these bullet points, I reckon. What's going up and down the wire, as we call it, so down to the server, is only the raw data. Historically, old pages needed the entirety of all of the skeleton of the page, the HTML as we call it, as well as resending many of the same things over and over. The CSS and the JavaScript would get resent on many pages. So when we cut it down to just the data, we'll talk about GraphQL in a moment, it's hugely more efficient, both for the browser and for the server. That means that you get more performance on the server end and you get a faster experience on the browser end. and you get the SEO benefits that we've talked about because of that improvement in speed. It also means that you can personalize this. So in order to achieve decent speed on an older style of template site, we needed to rely on caching. And that meant that you took a copy of a page and you served it up to all of your visitors. And it's very hard to be able to change that based on the individual's browsing behavior or things that you know about them. But with a headless approach or an API-first approach, it's much more granular and you can insert personal content into the page because it's more efficient. So you don't have to save the server all the hard work of doing that rendering. The browser's already doing it for you. So we're also breaking the linkage between the front end code, what actually displays this experience in the front end of the browser, and the back end code. And that has some big improvements for you as a merchant. It means that we can work on the UI, we can improve things, we can add things to it completely independently of the back end. And you don't have to worry about deployment to a back end system and taking outages and having to retest all of your integrations, because none of that is changing. All that you're changing is the front end. That means there's a much lower barrier also for developers. You can bring in people who don't need to know anything about it, the e-commerce backend. All that they know is they're getting data and they can make it look beautiful. So we can move much more rapidly and be much more targeted with how we do that. Cool. So choose your style. How are we going to actually pick a path? Because there's quite a lot of jargon floating around. Let's just throw up some terms on the screen here. You'll hear things like decoupled CMS and commerce-led, and where is the glass? I don't know. I don't even know what the glass is, but or single-page application and API first, API oriented, API orchestrated. The important thing here is the head is that consumer-facing experience layer. So what it is that ultimately the consumer is interacting with and viewing. And all of this is about where in the e-commerce stack, as we call it, that head is being created and served up to the customer. So let's look at some diagrams. The first of these show us what's called commerce-led, or perhaps what a little less favorably would be called a monolith, whereby the commerce platform is responsible for displaying that head in that integrated storefront. So all of the devices, a browser, a mobile browser, a desktop, B2B users, all those different modes of interacting with the site. If you want to change anything, it's all done within the commerce platform. One step of decoupling, or what's often called a decoupled CMS, of breaking that dependency, inserts a CMS or a digital experience platform in front of the commerce platform, and that then is responsible for displaying and receiving the inputs from the customer, still having the commerce platform responsible for integrating all of those back office services. So when we can compare and contrast, what it means is the commerce-led, you've got to make all of your changes in the commerce tool. Anything that you want to do to influence the customer experience must be done inside a commerce tool. That can be problematic in a couple of ways. It tends to be expensive and it tends to be risky because all of your security considerations, your privacy considerations, payment safety, PCI as we call it, all needs to be managed very, very carefully when you make a modification to the commerce tool. So it's a real bottleneck, and in a lot of cases, that commerce tool may have restrictions on what third parties will allow you to be allowed to be integrated. Salesforce Commerce Cloud being a classic example of that. So by contrast, experience-led has that CMS in front of it, and the CMS is doing the display of the content. Typically, that gives you much better tools to be able to design layout and prepare content and target snippets of personalized content to the consumer. But you've still got to modify what is inherently a very complex tool. And in fact, for some of them at the high end, the Adobe Experience Manager or Drupal or those sorts of ones are equally complex. And as to the commerce tools, of course, they don't have the security aspect nearly as much, but you still have that large system that you've got to modify anytime you want to introduce third-party functionality or content. Okay, so moving on, here is the example of what a truly headless ecosystem looks like. And we do want to distinguish between a headless commerce tool or a headless CMS, because each of those are systems within the overall ecosystem, but they may in fact have their own head. So a headless ecosystem means that all of the different providers of functionality and content are drawn together through a front end, a head, so to speak, which is only interacting through APIs, and then presents a consistent UI UX experience in the browser for all of these sort of touch points. So you'll notice that the commerce platform is just a peer of the other systems that are involved in creating the right experience alongside of content management. So there are some formal patterns to describe this. In fact, there's an industry alliance called the MACH Alliance, and they describe microservices. We'll just run through this quick birth. Microservices being the M, and these are composable. You can pick and choose the different microservices. Everything in this environment must be API driven, and in fact, API first ideally. They need to be based on the cloud so that they can scale up and down, and they can have the necessary uptime, and they need to be headless. So all of those things are mandatory to comply with the MACH pattern. And when you put a progressive web application as an example of that, you can check out the MACH Alliance yourself. They have a website which provides some useful case studies and information on how to achieve it. So this diagram summarizes, it's a slightly different view of what we saw before, so that the front end through an API layer is able to pick and choose which of those composable business packages that are the right size and the right fit for your business, whether they be a search and merchandising tool, whether they be a personalization and targeting tool, or loyalty, or whatever might be the right combination of capabilities, obviously content management as well. You can assemble all of those through the API, and then populate them through your backend systems via a RESTful API. Okay, so let's have a look at getting the squad together. What are the things that we need to do to be able to execute this? Jared.
So here's a deployment diagram showing the architecture for a relatively simple headless e-commerce system. As Jonathan mentioned earlier, what we're really demonstrating here is the ability of the front end to be deployed completely independently of both the middleware extensions and the e-commerce backend as well. We also have a more complicated diagram here showing a multi-brand, multi-agent, multi-region, multi-platform, all the multis retailer. Here we can see not only is there a decoupling that allows the rapid iteration of front-end changes, but also a reuse of that application across multiple different backends, different regions, and different brands, but still enabling a consistent customer experience across those. So when wouldn't you go headless, or why wouldn't you go headless? It's not for all situations. You need to ask yourself if you need this flexibility. Perhaps not all scenarios are complex enough to warrant a fully headless solution. Perhaps your business as it is at the moment is well suited to the offering of the e-commerce platform. An e-commerce driven design is still a valid choice when the functionality is there, and it will obviously be a simpler solution for you. It also will reduce the developer skills you require, because developing in the single page app or PWA space requires a more front-end engineer style developer than a traditional template development. And that's a skill set that is quite specialized, increasingly specialized, and in very high demand at the moment. So you will need skilled developers or a great development partner. And finally, to actually enable all of this and to have that great customer experience, you'll need to ensure that you have a common view of your customer available across all of the services.
And that's really, it's a double-edged sword, that one. Yes, it is a difficult thing to achieve, but there are a lot of benefits to the wider business if you can execute on that. So that may be more of a, a stepping stone. Well, we can't get there until we've got the CDP, but, it's something that we want to achieve. So it's potentially that's a timing thing, as is the developer skills, because this architectural approach is becoming more popular. That's why the skills are in demand.
Yeah, we strongly believe that even when choosing an e-commerce driven architecture, that you should still be choosing a platform that is going to allow you to grow and potentially get those benefits in the future if your business changes. So, what next? What if you actually you've decided this might be the direction for you?
Let's do it.
What do you need? Okay, you need, obviously, a scalable API. The API is the heart of the headless architecture. It'll drive the performance and set the limitations of your application. Just as a real quick, high-level explanation, an API is a real-time documented interface between the systems, in this case, between your e-commerce system and the various other applications that might make up your composable commerce architecture and the front end. The API must be reliable. That's fairly obvious. It must be consistent in its performance and capable of operating at large scale when you have click frenzy sales and big promotions. You don't want it to grind to a halt. Very importantly, the API must be complete. You must be able to access all of the functionality of the e-commerce platform through the API. And you'll, I think Jonathan earlier mentioned that the term often mentioned is API first. API first is when the platform has a policy that for a feature to be complete or released, it has to have an API. So that's a philosophy in building software. And to build a modern decoupled system where an API is essential, and in most cases, to build that scalable API, you're going to be cloud-based. Here's just relating to that a quick BigCommerce slide where they talk about how good their API is and what their performance is like, and I can
we can attest to
that. We can attest that it's very high performance.
We've tried quite hard to break the BigCommerce API in terms of how much product data we can pump into it, and we haven't found a tipping point yet, no matter how much we try to flood it. So I can speak from experience that the backend APIs for BigCommerce are spectacularly scalable.
Absolutely. Another piece of the toolkit is GraphQL. GraphQL is a client-focused standard for interacting with the API. It is just an alternate methodology to a traditional API. Often these were REST-based APIs, and those APIs are function-based. Perhaps you would need, if you wanted to get a list of recommended products for a customer, you might have to make a call to get the current customer, make another call to get their product recommendations list, and possibly make another call or even another few calls to get the actual details of those products.
Or the contents of the shopping cart.
Or the contents of the shopping cart. So a lot of calls, and potentially you've got way more data than you actually needed, and it's going to be way slower because it ended up having to make so many calls. And those calls were sequential.
Yeah.
So the big advantage of a GraphQL API is that you fetch exactly the data you need in one request, all of the data and no more. So there's the less latency and less actual data as well. So it's faster. And then the other big advantage of a GraphQL API is the client making the request is actually defining the shape of the response. What this means practically is that it's lower risk that you're going to have issues when the back end changes because the front end has actually defined what the data it gets back is going to look like.
Front end's got no one to blame except itself.
Oops, I skipped a slide. So what else is in the toolkit to get started? fortunately, you don't actually have to build from the ground up. There are many great emerging tools, and I've chosen to highlight a few here. Vercel Next.js Commerce is a great option. It has pre-built BigCommerce connections. It's built in React. It comes with server-side rendering out of the box. And the great thing with Next is they actually offer the ability for BigCommerce customers to, in a few clicks, deploy and connect a Next.js Commerce site fully functional to your existing BigCommerce site. Vue Storefront is a very mature e-com app written in a different language called Vue. It has connections for just about every e-commerce backend that would support headless commerce. And for a more customized approach where you really want to build up a solid point of difference, BigCommerce Big Design is a library of React components that can be put together and extended and customized how you want to create a really customized experience. So microservices, we did mention them earlier on, but we have sort of glossed over what they really are. A microservice is an alternative approach to traditional monolithic development. In monolithic development, you take the core system, the starting point, maybe it's an open source system, you extend it, you add your own functionality over time, you keep patching it, adding more things into it, and all of the functionality of your entire system is within one code base, one application. Alternatively, in a microservice, you've separated the concerns into business capabilities. You've organized all of your business capabilities into their own small apps. Those apps are then highly maintainable and testable because they're smaller and have defined boundaries. They're loosely coupled with defined interfaces for interacting with each other. They're independently deployable, which is super important. It means that you don't lose your loyalty program because you need to make a deployment to change the way that your your shipping rates are provided. It's organized around the business capabilities and can be owned by a single small team because the size of the code is so much smaller.
All right, well, thanks for coming on that journey with us. Hopefully you found some useful nuggets of information. In summary, it's all about the customer experience. You need to understand what it is about your consumers, your customers, that is going to provide them with that, the convenience, whether it be the speed and the accessibility. We talked about the content and being contextually relevant and engaging, but also putting the control in their hands, because that's the expectation now, particularly in a privacy-first world. So a composable architecture approach is an excellent way for you to deliver on that customer experience while still maintaining the flexibility to respond to what is a dynamic business environment always, but particularly in 2021, but also still retaining the efficiency of some of those pre-built solution packages that allow you to get up and running really quickly. It's not for everyone, and that is clear. This is for merchants that have the need or the desire to lead and to innovate and to really raise the bar. They see the way to succeed in this environment of digital commerce is to really take control of that environment, and this gives you the ability to control it to a high degree and with a lot less risk and inefficiency than what you've had historically. So take the time to, step one, understand what it is that organizationally your strategic goals are. Not even necessarily just in the e-com unit, but across board level strategy goals. What's going on in that 3 to 5 year horizon that you need to be able to respond to and to meet their high level goals, and whether or not a composable commerce or headless approach is the right one for you. It is a relatively new area, but it is well proven. We've shown some examples today. There are more links in the presentation that we can send through to you as well. Do your own research, but many of the largest application providers in the world, let alone within e-commerce, have adopted and found great results with the composable commerce approach, and specifically with progressive web apps. So as I said, at Aligent, we're very much believers in this. Every single project that we've started from scratch since the middle of last year is using this approach, and we believe that it is the way forward. So we'd love to talk to you some more about it. If you have other questions about microservices, about GraphQL and those fun things, or how we've been able to deliver on it for our clients. So thank you again. Thank you, Jared.
Thank you.
It's been a lot of fun. Hoping next time we have an Ecom 360, we can do it in person. Little quick blurb about Aligent before we go, in case you're wondering a bit more about our organisation. This was our 10-year anniversary a couple of years ago, so I guess that's a clue that we're about 12 years old. Some key stats about our organisation, I think is what we've, the positioning ones, we've talked about this before, very much focused on long-term relationships. Proud to have won international awards, specifically within the Magento domain, but also last year we were recognised as the new partner of the year in BigCommerce APAC, which I'm very proud to build on a great relationship with the BigCommerce team. We're approaching 60 staff in total, and many of those are developers and primarily based here in our Adelaide office, which is really key to our culture of collaboration. And that, I think, leaves us just with some logo splash. So a few clients who we were privileged to work with over the years, many of whom have already delivered a headless commerce approach or are currently executing that in full. As we said, some of these go back through 2017 when we first started implementing this style, and have delivered great results. So thank you again, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the summit.
Thanks a lot.